I think that's human again, is to you don't have to be a crazy kinkster all the time. And most people aren't. It's like you can have a polite and public facing face for the public and for your culture and society, but you can also have, and you're totally allowed to have the other side, which is more true you and the private you, and that can be your private life should be as rich and fulfilled as it can be without limitation.
Wow, that was a great statement. Thank you so much. And I think this is so true. So when I travel to foreign countries, I would always observe what are the
Mhm.
rules or what is
Right.
common, and then I would adapt. Welcome to Inspired Choice today. I'm your host, Caroline Biesalski, here to bring you authentic stories, surprising lessons, and powerful takeaways to fuel your journey in business and life. In each episode, I'll take you from one inspiring guest to the next, blending their experiences with my expertise to uncover practical strategies you can use right away. Whether you're starting out or stepping up, stay tuned for insights and actionable tips that make a difference. And stick around until the end for a special freebie just for our listeners.
Mhm.
Hello and welcome, Inspired Podcast community. This is your new episode. My name is Caroline, and my today's guest is Max Carey, and I'm so happy that he said yes to our interview. Welcome, Max.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate getting an opportunity to have a chat.
That's great, and I would love to introduce you to the audience. Just a second. You are a first-time director with roots in Montreal and Luxembourg. How do you pronounce this? Luxembourg City. Over 30
Mhm.
years, you have traveled to 137 countries, cultivating a unique cultural perspective. Your curiosity and bold personality drive you to challenge societal norms, right? Particularly regarding kink. And I hope I pronounced this right. As the director
Absolutely.
yeah, Touch King, you explore the beauty of consensual kink, emphasizing the importance of negotiation, informed consent, and aftercare. Your mission is to spark open conversations that challenge stereotypes and promote awareness of kink's role in fostering trust, communication, and intimacy. Welcome to the Inspired Podcast, Max Carey.
Perfect. Thank you for that introduction. That was exactly right.
Thank you so much. It's always not a challenge, but a pleasure for me to connect people and to learn something about new you call it culture. You traveled the world so much. So my
Well,
first question.
it's cultures and subcultures, It's like there's a bigger sort of cultures and then there's smaller and smaller subcultures. This is kind of a subculture that actually crosses over many cultures, but it manifests in different ways in different cultures, which is interesting.
Oh, I love that. I love exploring this too. So my first question to you is, what inspired you to create Touch Kink, and what message do you hope viewers take away from the film?
In spite of having the opportunity to travel and live in many different cultures, from living with the San Bushmen in Namibia to living with wealthy industrialists in Europe, I thought I kind of had a fairly wide understanding of the world. And one day I met a dominatrix and had a conversation with this dominatrix and realized that I had a lot of misconceptions. I expected this person to be kind of a bit like a movie cliche, I guess, and it was really a kind, normal person. And I don't know why, but it surprised me. And that became really interesting. And we had a long conversation. She said, no, you're not the only one. Everyone always assumes that we're going to be this sort of person. And we can be that. That is one aspect of who we are, but it's not where we start. We're just people. And she and I just talked and talked, and she suggested that, there's so many misconceptions in this world. So many people don't understand what consensual kink is. They still have these ideas that people are hurting each other, that they're doing things that are non-consensual, all these crazy ideas. And so it just seemed like a really interesting subject. It's a guarded world, it's a secret world. So she offered to introduce me to people. So I met more people through her and then more people through there. And it just seemed like a fascinating, it was like visiting a country I'd never visited before. And one thing led to another. And yeah, a few years later, here we are.
I love that story, and also the connection to the cultures you mentioned before, and also to
Mhm.
foreign countries, so to say. And of course, we can, let's say, reduce prejudices, right? And also about, I'm thinking about a word with boundaries or limitations, or yeah, something like you step outside comfort zone. But it was not that, it was more the exploring and research aspect you mentioned, right?
Yeah, it was that. I mean, it's funny. Maybe I drank the Kool-Aid a little bit too much, but to me, I started seeing it as not only an interesting subculture, but actually in many ways the way forward for us culturally, because the world is very much about making no assumptions. You know, you tell me about you, I tell, and we talk to each other without judgment and without a lot of assumptions, and then develop this sort of trust or this relationship and decide if we do something or not. And if we do something, then yeah, even after doing it, we sort of check in with each other and then see if we want to do this again. And I thought, shouldn't everything be like this? Shouldn't we all be assuming, like, should we not be assuming things about you because you're from Germany, or this person because they look like a man, or this person because they look like, why not actually let them talk and also feel comfortable and free enough to be open and honest? Whether it's business or personal relationships, just seem like there was a lot of knowledge in kink that I think could be applied to business and general relationships. I think a lot of men, especially right now, feel like there's no rules anymore. There used to be sort of rules of how you were supposed to behave, and now there's no rules. Like, what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to say? And the truth is, you can actually do or say anything you want. You just need to have consent and have that other person be willing to do that. And just because one person is willing to do that with you doesn't mean someone else is. So, building these individual relationships based on trust and consent kind of gives you the way forward for all your relationships. Maybe you wanted to live like it's 1955, and your partner gets you the newspaper and brings you a home cooked meal. Maybe that's your thing, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. But you can't assume that's for everybody. Maybe you want to be a woman in the night and a man during the day. That's fine, as long as, again, you know, I just see it as such a great way forward culturally as well, for us to really help navigate the future instead of thinking there's one set of rules and we should all follow this set of rules, is to throw away the rules and realize we do this individually. What would you like to do? There's still politeness on top of it. I mean, there are general rules in countries that are about politeness, and politeness has to be respected, of course. But once you're past the politeness phase, then it's time for honesty, you know,
Yes.
and
And
directness. The Germans are good at that, actually, generally being direct and honest, more so than English Irish. We tend to take a few years to get around to talking about things.
oh, yes, that's so true. That is what I witnessed the last years, 2 or 3 years, when I endeavored in, let's say, in studies in the United States, or I followed courses, or I traveled as well. And I always say this when I come along, and I say this like a manual. We Germans are very direct. So, but when I'm direct to someone, then I expect the same, that they tell me the truth, right away. So I appreciate that, because that way you get rid of all the fake, or all the whatever it is. And when you talked about cultures as well, and I think yeah, it is now. Now I lost my thought, because yeah, you said
Mhm.
negotiating on an individual level, and this is
Correct.
also reducing prejudices, and not putting all people in one pot, or we would
Exactly.
say this in German. I don't know how
Yeah.
you say this. Yes. Mhm.
It's just having, another big aspect of this, and one of the reasons I think I was sort of uniquely qualified to do this is I've witnessed how so many cultures behave and how some of them will have exactly the opposite reactions to something. Again, to example, Germany, America is a good example. Some people think German people are tough and a little cold, but I always say Americans are like peaches and Germans, for the most part, obviously, I'm not going to say everyone, are like coconuts. They might seem a bit harder on the outside, but once you're in, you're in. You've got trust. Where Americans are like peaches, you think you're in, but you're never actually in the middle. There's a hard stone in the middle you'll never get to. So it's like that you think you're like they're so like welcome to Walmart, so friendly or whatever, but it's really hard to get to that real core because it's very guarded. Where German people are like hard on the outside, but once you're in unless you do something bad and you get kicked back out again. I don't think one's better or worse. It's just that how they work, and other cultures have a similar sort of dynamic. But the interesting thing was everybody does things differently, and the moment you realize that, you realize that you can also, as two people, do things differently the way you want to create your culture. But you have to have the space. You have to allow people the space to be open and honest. Maybe they're really they feel like they're supposed to be the football star, but really they want to be the cheerleader. And so you have to be ready to be able to tell your partner, I know you think I'm a football star, but I'd rather be a cheerleader, for example, rather than feel like, oh, I can't say that. Oh my goodness. And then be unhappy for your life.
Oh, I
Yeah.
know exactly what you mean. So many people are living a life they don't want to, with like someone else thought they would live, other people's ideas, like it comes from the parents. But of
Mhm.
course, I have another question for you. How do you think society's perceptions of kink need to change, and why is this conversation important now?
I think it's very similar to the LGBTQ movement. We just you have to get to know people. You have to realize these are nice people. They're contributing to society. They're not somehow like deviants that are doing weird stuff. And just like, I mean, there was a time in America, I believe you would actually get thrown in jail for being gay, and all because people just couldn't understand. And as you started to know, you had doctors and you had friends and you had lawyers and you realized they were nice people, then that is becoming more and more open. I think it's much farther along. But I think kink has to follow the same thing. People have to be a little bit more open about talking about what's okay and what's not okay. I mean, it's not kink to tie somebody up and do something horrible to them. It's perfectly kink if you consented and you agreed and you want to tie somebody wants to be tied up and wants to have her, perfectly fine. It's the behavior. People have to educate and understand the difference between what we're talking about as consensual, ethical kink and bad behavior. Bad behavior is still bad behavior. Anything without consent, anything with violence, these things are, still bad. So just education. So it's this educational process that needs to happen so people can open up. As I say, one of the main characters in my movie was someone who really thought people were crazy. And I don't know if you've seen it, and I'll leave it for the S, but it's interesting to see her evolution as she discovers more about kink, what she discovers about herself and what she discovers about kink. And that, I think, starting that conversation, there's have to be a million more bits of conversation, a million more people coming out, but helps society grow and helps people be happier, helps people be more creative as well. I mean, I think the currency of the future is creativity. And if you actually look at pretty much every major genius in history, they were all a bit kinky because part of what being kinky is thinking outside of the box. And that's also what it is to be creative. So not only should we embrace it, maybe we should be encouraging this because the currency of the future is ideas, creative ideas, and machines are going to do most of the other stuff. If it's something can be done by a machine, it'll be done by a machine. The one thing that humans will still be valued for is crazy ideas and interesting ideas. So, you know, maybe we should teach kink.
Yes, I absolutely understand. And I had a thought in mind when you said you have to think outside the box. I thought you have to think outside the box, or being outside the box, outside of the box, because you are in the box when you are in a situation. You talked about the difference between crime or being violent, and then the consensual, right? You use this word, and I love that very much also about negotiation. And yeah, and to educate society to it is like when there are people like you, for example, in public showing or educate people, then other people can allow themselves to do the same or to explore themselves. You mentioned this as well. And it is so important to discover who you really are, right? What you really like and what you don't like.
That's right. And for some people, it's hard to. I mean, we already have cultures where, at least for men, often there's not the ability to have much more of an emotional spectrum than being angry and slightly happy with them, slightly pleased. So they have to realize you have other emotions, you have other feelings, and you shouldn't have shame around them. You should try to understand them. Um, I think it's also good for mental health to have these conversations and this kind of openness. Yeah, I think it's super important, and I like to say that there are no boxes. Humans are organic creatures. We're analog, and analog means we're all on a bunch of different spectrums at a bunch of different wavelengths at various different times, always moving. Only machines are like on or off or in a box. So why would we want to be in a box anyway? We're organic, analog creatures, and let's enjoy that reality, you know?
Yes, I heard this before. There is no box. Yes, I heard this because, yeah, the box is where all our false beliefs are and our
Yeah,
habits we were taught in childhood, for example. So I totally
exactly.
understand what you mean. It is like freeing yourself, and because in order when you want to have different results, it is what Einstein says, right? The definition of insanity is thinking the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So this is the
Mhm.
same thing when you
Exactly.
explore new cultures, or yeah, I like this. Yes, I like this
Yeah.
too. And of course, I have another question for you. It is, can you share your perspective on how negotiation and consent within kink practices can strengthen intimacy and trust in relationships?
Well, I mean, any relationship, um, to be successful, especially over the long term, you have to be more open and be honest about your thoughts, even if they're a little uncomfortable. Because the opposite, if you I don't know, let's say you have a particular interest in something and you feel too much shame, you can't tell your partner that you want to wear stockings or something. Maybe you're going to start going outside the relationship for that. So by having a open conversation and being the people trusting you, you're able to strengthen the relationship because you feel that you can talk about anything and and not be judged. They may say, okay, that's not really my thing, but not feel that you just simply can't go there. Because I think that's where people start, going outside because if they're too afraid to ask. One of the couples I met, and I wish I had their whole story on film, but he was literally a quarterback. She was literally a cheerleader in America. They married, high school sweethearts, married at 19, divorced at 21. They meet up 20 years later at a kink event. Turns out he was actually quite submissive and wanted a dominating woman and dominating and all, but he was too afraid to say anything. She actually wanted a submissive man and was quite dominating, but she was too afraid to say anything also. So they actually were perfect for each other, but they got divorced because neither of them would be honest about what they were looking for. 20 years later, they meet and now they're back together and they're happily ever after. But it's just they lost 20 years because of the relationship, because both of them was playing a role they thought they had to play, and the relationship wasn't strong enough for them to actually, talk about these things. So,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, any kind of situation, any sort of thing that allows you to be more free about talking about things and feeling that you're safe to do so, of course, is going to strengthen any relationship.
I love that. I never thought of it that way, or the correlation, so to say, and that it is so important to open up and just to ask. I let's say ask for the things you want, or yeah. And not you talked about going outside or leaving the relationship, looking outside for other people where you can find it right where you are, just opening up,
Yeah,
having
sometimes.
a conversation. Mhm.
Or maybe, more often than not you can, and maybe you can't, and you come up with a different solution. I mean, there's a myriad of different potential relationship opportunities and things in the world, but starting with that openness, starting with that connection, you don't know where it's going to lead actually, but it's safer over the long term. Otherwise it just gets harder and harder to talk about these things. It's a subject that, people are shy about. So yeah, I hope people will be open. And it doesn't have to be about kink. Again, you could actually apply these to anything. Just being open about your thoughts. I've noticed a trend, especially with the Deadpool guy, what's his name, Ryan Reynolds. He's throwing in so much kinky undertones to all of his stuff. And it's funny because it's like maybe that's that generation, maybe it's what makes him edgy, but he just throws in like tons and tons of kinky type stuff. And I guess it's like if you know, you're kind of wink, wink. I know what he's talking about. If you don't, you're like, I don't know what he was talking about, but that's okay. He's funny. You know, there's a whole thing opening up. And I think that the more you're comfortable talking about these things, I think the more you'll resonate with each other. And I think that's one of the reasons he resonates with the audience. I think he's actually got quite kinky fan base, which is probably 33% of the population that, watches movies because he keeps throwing these little things in that I don't know how many people understand.
I was not aware of it. I didn't understand. And you talk about the movie, right? Not about when the actor is talking as
No,
the
no,
actor.
until the movie that his Deadpool
Yeah.
series. I just watched one of his Deadpool movies, and he's always throwing in various things that are quite funny, but very like subtly, like humorous. But yeah, I think if you know, you know. If you don't mind. It's just fascinating. But I think maybe this is happening. I talk to younger people in California, and everybody's seems to identify as polyamorous and gender fluid. And I suppose when I was young, I was probably that too. I just didn't have those words. I wasn't ready to settle down with one. I was interested in a bunch of girls, and I thought of myself actually used to think of myself as a woman trapped in a man's body, but I was okay with that because I still like women, so it worked out. But I mean, you we didn't have those words, we didn't have those concepts, and I think they have them now, and I think that bodes well for the future, that they're not quite as trapped. They have words to describe these things, that they didn't have, so that helps.
I love that. And I wanted to ask when you talked about the Deadpool guy, if there's a secret language.
Really a secret language. He's just making lots of sort of jokes about sort of anal sex and different kinds of toys and different kinds of kinky sex practices. He sort of makes little things, throwing a lot of these sort of references about feet and different things into it that are sort of, kinky crowd knows exactly what he's talking about.
I like this. So I have to rewatch this again and
Mhm.
and and look for the clues there. Or is
Yeah.
it clues or cues or whatever. Yes.
I think it's just the kind of jokes that he's making, that they're I don't know, a little more sophisticated, I guess. I don't know, you know.
Yes. Amazing. A whole new
A
world.
little bit more gender fluid too, because sometimes you're like, he sort of says something, he's sort of interested in someone who might be genetically male and someone else is genetically female, but it's normal. I think when the kink community, a lot of people, it's really not so much about gender, it's more about identity. So, I mean, for some, everyone's different, but that alone is kind of a big thing, sort of throwing that in there.
Yes. It's a sort of freedom, new freedom. When you have words, new words, then like a
Yeah,
movement.
new way. I mean, we now know about quantum physics and we have mesons and quarks, and we can discover, how atoms are structured because we have those words. We didn't have those words before. Was Niels Bohr, right? Like 150 years ago or something? It's not that long ago, We developed the word to describe things and we have a better understanding, but there's still long ways to go.
Absolutely. So my next question is about your goals. Do you set
Mhm.
goals for yourself or intentions, and what is one of your next projects?
Um, I actually, my biggest goal is always to try to live in the moment, actually, and be mindful, but something I would like to do, and I'm developing, is a 10-part series about various ways humans interact. Kink, love, classical love, different traditions, and how some people are more on the edge with that and leading, and the ideas of how people get together. I'd like to do a 10-part series about that, finding people that so different ways of connection. There are people that are more spiritual. There are people that are far more pure sexual. For people that are far more intellectual, and various combinations thereof. And I find it interesting how people connect in different personalities and different cultures. So I'd like to do a series about that.
Do I find this on Netflix?
That's the goal. Yeah, I'm developing it right now, and with any luck, it'll go into production for Netflix. Yeah.
I love that because I see it already
Mhm.
before my mind's eye. It's done, and I wish you the best of luck. I am the first watcher then when when it comes
Cool.
out, of course. Very
Yeah,
interesting.
I think it'll be really interesting. And for me, it's like I feel like life kind of rivers come together. And when I met the dominatrix, it was kind of like I thought I knew a lot, and this the world of kink was interesting. And now I'm a little farther along the river, and now I feel the world of kink is interesting, but I see it more about just open conversations, about consent, about reinventing culture, one person at a time, and just understanding, sure, there's still one takes their shoes off when they enter a household, or one doesn't take their shoes off when they enter a household, depending on what country you are. Those kind of general politeness is fine. That's important, and those rules I think are useful. For to know what you're supposed to bring a bottle of wine, or you're not supposed to bring a bottle of wine. These are things that I think are useful on a first level. So understanding those are different cultures, but that's just like a politeness thing. It's not real. It's like a starting thing. And then under that, you create the rules you want to create. So you still have to recognize, I'm going to play by your rules. If it's take your shoes off or don't take your shoes off, I'm going to do that because that's respect for you. Once we get to know each other a little bit, if we decide to do some more, then now let's be honest about what we're interested in. So it's a different, and that's okay to have those two sides. I think that's human again, is to you don't have to be a crazy kinkster all the time. And most people aren't. It's like you can have a polite and public facing face for the public and for your culture and society, but you can also have, and you're totally allowed to have the other side, which is more true you and the private you, and that can be your private life should be as rich and fulfilled as it can be without limitation.
Wow, that was a great statement. Thank you so much. And I think this is so true. So when I travel to foreign countries, I would always observe what are the
Hmm.
rules or what is
Right.
common, and then I would adapt and I would do the
Hmm.
same. When I enter, how do you call this? Mosque, in for
A
the
mosque.
mosque. You call it mosque,
Mhm.
okay? So then I
Mhm.
have to cover my hair,
Cover, of
and
course, yeah. Mhm.
yeah, then of course.
Same in well, actually most religious traditions, you're supposed to be more modest when you walk into a temple or a church or a mosque.
And I don't wear my beach wear was no, of
No.
course I don't. It's not appropriate. So there are rules, and I love the new freedom you showed us, and the negotiation thing. So I learned so much. And this was our interview. And now it's time for your last thoughts, your final thoughts to the audience, please.
Well, it took me a number of years to make this film, not having like a Hollywood promotion budget. I'm doing podcasts and talking to people, and I just encourage them to check it out. Go to touchkink.com, check out the teaser for the film. I think you'll be impressed. And if you are, sign up for the newsletter or see the movie where it's available where you are. So go to touch.com, touchkink.com. I guess I should know my own URL, touchkink.com. Yeah, that's the big thing. It's just how, check it out. Independent film is hard to promote. Everybody wants to promote the next Marvel movie or superhero movie. Those seem to get the budget. So, you know, check out independent cinema.
Yes, I do, and I checked out your website and the trailer, you call it, I don't know, but I love
Mhm.
it. And yeah, please reach out to Max. He's amazing. I learned so much. And thank you,
Mhm.
thank you, thank you for our
Thank you.
interview.
Thank
It
you very
was
much.
fun. And see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to Inspired Choice today. I'm thrilled to have you on this journey of growth and transformation. Don't forget to hit follow or subscribe to stay connected and never miss an episode. And here's something special. Grab your free 20-minute breakthrough session with me. It's designed to help you kickstart or level up your business. Just check out the show notes for more. Until next time, keep making those inspired choices. See you in the next episode.